This young woman's joy seemed improbable given her impoverished circumstances. Something about her captivates me in a way I can fully understand. Could she possibly be the one to heal the wounded solitude I had borne for years?
Congratulations to you, ma'am, you're pregnant.
My beloved, I wish you were here. We are expecting a baby. I promise to raise our baby just the way you would have wanted. I will raise our baby as a righteous, loving soul in the image of our unparalleled bond.
Aisha lounged on the plush divan in her family's opulent mansion, idly thumbing through a fashion magazine as the ceiling fans lazily circulated the warm evening air. Her parents' oil fortune afforded her every luxury, yet at 25 years old, she felt an emptiness that no amount of wealth could fill. Countless suitors had pursued her hand, drawn by her beauty and her family status, but she knew they only desired her money and privilege. Not a single man had ever loved her for herself. With a wistful sigh, she decided it was time to take a risk and find what her heart truly yearned for, true love untainted by greed. Under cover of night, Aisha slipped out of the mansion's rear entrance dressed in modest second-hand clothing, her jewels and finery left behind. She caught a bus to one of Abuja's poorest neighborhoods, her nerves fluttering with equal measures of fear and exhilaration. Finding a cheap room at a rundown inn, she began her quest to discover true love by living life as one of the city's impoverished residents. Adapting to her new life proved immensely challenging for Aisha. Simple tasks like cooking, cleaning, and bargaining at the market were totally foreign to the pampered socialite. She stuck out like a sore thumb amongst the poor, her aristocratic bearing and linguistic flourishes immediately marking her as an imposter. Undeterred, she doubled her efforts to blend in, slowly chipping away at the barriers that divided her from the common folk. After nearly a month of struggling, Aisha finally began gaining acceptance within her adopted community. She landed a job cleaning rooms at a dilapidated hotel, the backbreaking labor strengthening her in both body and spirit. The other staff members remained skeptical of her act, but a few warmed to her inherent kindness and eagerness to help anyone in need. For once, she was judged solely on her actions rather than the ill-gotten privilege of her birth. Bolaji was a kind-hearted construction worker who frequently passed by the rundown hotel where Aisha worked. Glimpsing her radiant smile as she swept the outer corridors, he felt an unfamiliar stirring in his heart. This young woman's joy seemed improbable given her impoverished circumstances. Something about her captivated him in a way he couldn't fully understand. Could she possibly be the one to heal the wounded solitude he'd borne for years? Over the next few weeks, Bolaji went out of his way to encounter Aisha during her hotel duties, offering a warm greeting or friendly conversation. She found herself looking forward to their simple interactions, relishing how he treated her as an equal rather than someone to be courted and coveted. His gentle, calloused hands spoke of an honest life of hard labor, not the soft entitlement of the rich men she'd known. Gradually, a bashful intimacy blossomed between the unlikely pair. One sweltering afternoon, Bolaji spotted me without hesitation. He lent his muscle to the arduous task. Walking side by side, sweat glistening on their brows, their banter flowed as naturally as the water they were struggling to control. For the first time in her life, Aisha understood what it meant to connect with someone on a deeper, unaffected level. This was the realness she'd been starving for. As her bond with Bolaji strengthened, Aisha found herself increasingly conflicted about her deception. He deserved to know the truth about who she really was. But would he still see her as the person he'd grown to admire, or would he recoil at her privileged background? She agonized over whether to risk the precious relationship they'd cultivated. In the end, her heart wouldn't allow her to continue the ruse with the man she was falling for. Aisha revealed her true identity to Bolaji during a picnic lunch in a sunny courtyard alcove. As the words stumbled out in a remorseful torrent, she braced herself for his anger and rejection. But his response left her disarmed. He simply took her hand in his and said her persona made no difference, only her spirit. In that moment, Aisha glimpsed the pure, unconditional love she'd been desperately seeking. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she realized her wildest dream was materializing before her eyes. Over the next few months, Aisha and Bolaji's connection evolved into a rapturous love affair. She remained living in poverty by choice, savoring each hard-won moment with the man who had effortlessly accepted her for her true self. His unwavering devotion was the greatest wealth she could ever possess. When he shyly asked for her hand, vowing to spend his life cherishing her, she didn't hesitate before saying yes. However, their marital bliss was to be devastatingly short-lived. On their 6-month wedding anniversary, Bolaji was struck by a hit-and-run driver while walking home from the construction site. He lingered in hospital for 2 agonizing weeks before succumbing to the catastrophic injuries. Aisha was utterly inconsolable, unremitting sobs racking her slender frame as the man who had shown her life's purest joy was so senselessly taken from her. In her despair, Aisha retreated from the ward that had finally taught her life's most profound lesson. She impulsively left the scholar she'd grown to cherish and returned to the Polisha family estate, slipping back into the empty opulence of her old existence. Her parents, overjoyed by her return, welcomed her back with no questions asked about her long absence. But for Aisha, the lavish trappings now ran utterly hollow without her husband's love to complete her. Months drifted by in an apathetic haze as Aisha struggled to find even the faintest remnants of the all-consuming joy she'd once felt. She picked listlessly at rich foods, no longer able to taste their flavors. The brilliant colors and textures of her couture gowns fell dully on her eyes. Each night, she would clutch Bolaji's tattered work shirt to her breast, breathing in the faint scent of honest labor to imagine his arms still enveloping her as she cried herself to sleep. Aisha's parents became increasingly concerned about her emotional paralysis. They consulted elite doctors and therapists in hopes of healing her profound depression, but their daughter remained entombed in an unshakable melancholy. In a bid to shock her from her nihilistic stupor, they revealed a disturbing truth: she was pregnant with Bolaji's child from the final, passionate weeks before his death. The news that she was carrying her beloved's unborn progeny shook Aisha from the depths of her anguish. She felt her husband's indomitable spirit reawaken within her, centered by an empowering purpose, to raise their child as a righteous, loving soul in the image of their unparalleled bond. As her belly gently swelled, she diligently prepared the lavish nursery to welcome the child into an environment of material privilege. But more importantly, she vowed to instill values of humility, kindness and true grit that she'd only learned through adversity. Amira entered the world in a haze of love, tears and joy for Aisha. Cradling her angelic newborn daughter, she channeled every ounce of cherished memory and emotion she'd shared with Bolaji into her maternal bond. She serenaded the babe with the rich folk songs he'd shared and recounted the stories of his honorable life. Aisha was determined that her daughter would grow up with the clarity of Bolaji's profound humanity as her lodestar. While secretly sending private instructors to enrich Amira's education, Aisha enrolled her daughter in the same rundown public school she'd briefly attended in the poverty-stricken neighborhood during her transformative journey. She hoped the daily exposure would instill an unshakable empathy for the underprivileged within the sensitive, open-hearted girl. But the abject conditions and want Amira witnessed left her unsettled rather than enlightened about the harsh realities her mother had embraced willingly.